So hello everyone and welcome back to VizConnect. My name is Sagar Kapoor, part of customer success team at Tableau. And today is an honor to have Emily on VizConnect. It's the first time Emily is presenting on VizConnect. And let me just go ahead and talk about Emily. Emily is a Tableau enablement consultant at Red Hat, where she helps enable users to create and interact with engaging and informative visualization to make data-informed decisions. In addition to working at Red Hat, she is a founder for the Tableau Fringe Festival, co-lead of the new Accessibility Tug, co-founder of Data Plus Women and Data Plus Women DC. She is also an advisory board member of the Data Leadership Collaborative. Prior to working in data visualization space, she held managerial and leadership positions, taught and created database and leadership training. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Emily to talk about kill crickets with adoption and enablement. Emily, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are dialing in from. And if you're watching the replay, I hope you had a great time while you were away from this talk. Today, I'm talking about killing crickets with adoption and enablement. When I was putting this presentation together, all I could think about were crickets. And you know that sounds that when you're expecting to hear something or you open a door and it's just silence except for the quiet little chirp of the cricket. And you may be expecting something else, or maybe you're expecting that silence. But when we think about crickets, we think about silence. And that's not what we want when we publish dashboards or visualizations. So today I'm talking about how to squash, how to kill those crickets so that you can create some noise, create some engagement, and people can use what you've spent time working on. Efficiency is probably one of my core values, so I love it when time I've spent is meaningful and useful and valuable. So I know Sagar provided a little bit of a background on who I am. Here are some other fun little facts. I'm an accessibility advocate. I'm co-leading the new accessibility tug. RSVP, when we get the splash page launched, we'll be holding it on September 21st. I'm also a pageant queen. I am Mrs. Next Level and All-American Mrs. Maryland Woman, so that's fun. I founded Pretty Strong Smart, which is a girls in empowerment initiative. And I'm a former bank examiner, marketing fanatic, have worked with marketing when I was an entrepreneur, which was just, I fell in love with it. I'm a mom, a coffee lover. A lot of times you will see me drink my coffee. And I'm also an executive MBA candidate with the Quantic class of 2023. So no one wants to hear this. No one wants to hear the sound of crickets. And sometimes it can be a struggle to really get your dashboards, like get some momentum going. And I'll say dashboards, but really it's any visual analytics piece. And while I am talking about dashboards, I really want you to find your story within this talk. So if you're not working on dashboards, but something related in that like data ecosystem, these concepts still apply. So dashboard adoption. If a dashboard is published and no one uses it, does it even exist? Good question. The way that I thought through, like, how can we really solve this problem and get that work that people have spent so much time on? People care about the work that they're doing and want it to be used. How can I help them? So I came up with this methodology, UAM squared, understanding, awareness, marketing, and monitoring. Before I get into it, I want to share a story. This is like real life story behind the Zoom screen or WebEx screen, I suppose. And when I was a manager, I was responsible for putting together a first of its kind workbook that monitored resources across lines of business. We were trying to break down silos, trying to be collaborative across lines of business. We had so much in this workbook, so much valuable information. I handed it off to one of my direct reports, and then a few months later ended up leaving that division. And so I happened to see the guy in the hallway one day, and I was like, hey, how is this workbook doing? Like, are people loving it? And he was like, oh, well, I haven't heard anything, so must be good news, right? And I'm like, maybe, maybe not. Fast forward a couple of months, and I started hearing some buzz around people creating a new dashboard that would help measure resources across lines of business. And I was like, wait, we have this like massive workbook that we spent so much time and energy, like really, like it was the first time we tried to marry data sources, which weren't built for sharing data. So much work went into this. And I'm like, hey, we already have something. Like, have you ever found yourself in that position? We already have something. Let's use what we have. People were not even aware of it. So we had this massive workbook. Nobody knew about it. It had great information, but nobody had really adopted it. And as a result, people started doing the same kind of work that we had done a year or so late before. So it happens. And I have drawn, so what you're going to see in this methodology, I think will help prevent something like that from happening again. So let's dive into it. Understanding. You really need to know your audience. And this goes beyond requirements to develop a dashboard. It's more than just where do I put the bar chart? What are their brand colors? I have fallen in love with human computer interaction. I'm in the process of taking a course, but halfway through this course, one of the biggest things that has stuck with me is how are they going to use it? Like, where are they using it? What are they going to do after they use it? Are they going to download it? Are they going to talk about it in a meeting? So it's getting beyond the dashboard requirements and really learning about your audience. So what's the best way to reach them? Are they high touch people? Do they need personal attention, or are they low touch? Can you hit publish and send a link and they're going to start using it? You need to know that information in order to have people to adopt your dashboard. Go back to why this dashboard is important. The WIFM, what's in it for me? What's in it for the person using the dashboard? One of the things I learned in marketing was that people do two things. They run away from pain and they run towards pleasure. So what are they running away from? What is the pain? Is the pain the manual effort it takes to get to the information that's in the dashboard? That was the before, perhaps. Are they running towards the pleasure of, wow, this is going to generate revenue for me? If you think about that, it helps you understand your audience so that you can effectively communicate and collaborate with them and launch your dashboard and have it be successful. Has it been discussed in the business? And so, and this question is really coming from somebody else is helping. Maybe you have another unit that helps develop dashboards for the business, but really you could talk about this you think about it from any level. So is it an edict? We are moving from X to Y, and Y is your new dashboard, which we will all be using. So is there a mandate that everybody or the group, the population is going to be using this? Has been discussed as a new tool is coming out to help us do X? Or has it not been discussed at all and there are crickets there? It's helpful to understand this because then you can understand what you need to do in order to help with the enablement and adoption efforts. And I love this question. Who is your dashboard influencer? We all have heard about social media influencers, but we have influencers in business. These are the people who we can tap on shoulders, we can have conversations with, and they may or may not be key decision makers, but they can help influence the behavior and get people to use the dashboard. So who's your dashboard influencer? That person's going to be really important to tap into to help you create that engagement and adoption. And have you created a user-centered dashboard? Is it designed for them in a way that is easy to use? Does it give your audience what it needs in order to meet whatever their objective is? If it's not, it's much harder to have some adoption if it's not intuitive and if it doesn't meet their needs. If it's meant to provide insights, does it actually provide insights? Basically, is it doing what it's intended to do? Does it add value and does it make their lives easier? So then we move on to the A, awareness. How aware is your audience of this dashboard? That kind of relates to how has it been discussed? Is it a redesign? Is it totally new? What, if anything, has been communicated about it? This is really helpful because if you already have an audience for it, great, that's fantastic. You don't have to do as much. If it's totally new, then okay, you may have to implement a launch plan. And when I say implement a launch plan, that can be as formal or as informal, but what activities are you going to do to get it published and to have people start using it? Again, has somebody from the business been talking about it? Was somebody from the audience involved in the development process? Are people aware of it? And then does everyone who needs to know about it actually know about it? Now, for some, they may be working in a different line of business and they're a resource that's contributing to this effort. And so you may not be in that division. So how would you know this? Well, it's really collaborating with others to help you understand what's being talked about. And if you're not sure, ask. Now, this is my most favorite part, the marketing. So what's going to make this dashboard a success? When you know that going in, that's really helpful. Do you have a target number of people who you'd like to get some adoption for? So how many views are you looking for on this dashboard? What are those metrics? I mean, what's the data behind it? Get some testimonies and business impact stories. What is the value that this brings? Hold dashboard tours. And in this tour, you can talk about who it's for, who's the primary audience. You can talk about the data. You can talk where people can find the dashboard. That's really important. Do they need to go to Tableau Cloud? Is it linked or embedded on an intranet page? Navigate to the dashboard, show them what they need to make it a success. Show them how easy it is to use. Depending on your audience, you may have people, and I've encountered this, where they're like, I'm afraid to break Tableau because I don't know what I'm doing. Well, okay, let me show you how easy it is to navigate. Talk about the transformation. I think this may be a little woo-woo for something STEMmy, but it's not about the dashboard itself. It's about the benefit of using the dashboard. So you go from, it took me hours to get this data, to the dashboard that allows me to get this data in seconds. And the so what of it is that's quicker time to decisions that could impact revenue, or it could just be a better use of my time. Like, I don't know about you, but I am pretty well engaged at work. And so if somebody can bring me a dashboard that helps me make a decision quicker, then that's great. Then I can use the rest of that time to work on other high priority work. So it's really talking about, when you market this, it's weaving some of that transformation in there. For marketing, I mentioned a little bit about like creating a launch plan, having metrics to know what success looks like. That's really helpful. And when you go on these tours, you can take, and the tours are really like Zoom or Google Meet or whatever your WebEx, whatever your video platform is. And you can take those testimonies or business impact stories from your beta testing or your UAT to say, this is my dashboard. Here's all this information. Here's the primary audience that this dashboard is aimed at. And in testing, users found that time to insight was improved by 5%, or it took them kind of that from to so what? It used to take them hours to get data. Now it takes them seconds. And as a result, they're able to do this. Weave some of that in. And it's really about hyping it up and putting it out there so that way people are aware of it. They understand what's going into it. And when you know your audience, by the way, so these aren't just like steps that don't relate to each other. Knowing your audience, if I know, I used to be a bank examiner, and if I know, and if anybody works with finance folks, they know that they like to know where the data is coming from, how precise it is. They like to trust but verify. So I worked with bank examiners who our motto was trust but verify. So when I would talk about dashboards, I needed to know, here's the data, here's where it comes from, here's how it's refreshed. Here's how reliable it is. I weave in all of those things because I know my audience wants to hear that. They want to know that they can trust and rely on this data that's being presented in a dashboard. And I think we see this when we work with folks who are moving away from Google Sheets or Excel charts and moving into a dashboard. They want to be able to trust this pretty picture. They want to be able to trust the charts because they can't see the data. So you need to help them with that to know, hey, listen, this is trustworthy. And for some of those folks, it may be like I'm pretending to do a mouse action or a right click of like view data so that you can see it. Like, look, you can see the data behind it if you need to. So it's having these conversations, it's marketing your dashboards, and you can make this as informal, as formal as you want. So, really think about what are the things that you can do to market your dashboard? Who can you work with? What type of information do you need to have in the dashboard tours? Other ways that you can market this dashboard. Newsletter content announcement. If your group puts out a newsletter and your audience is reading it and this dashboard relates to them, put it in there, talk about it, talk about the new features, talk about the benefits, but put it out there so that way people are aware of it and make it easy for them to get to it. Embed or link it to an intranet page. If people are going to go to a particular page, link to it, and that way they can easily find it. It's great to be able to market it, to do all of these things, but you want to reduce the barriers. You want to reduce the friction for them to get to the dashboard, because if they have to go through a bunch of hoops, it's really going to create a poor user experience. And so then they're less likely to request access. So like if you are putting this out there to a big audience, make sure that audience can actually access the dashboard. So that way you don't run into barriers there, because that creates a poor experience. And then that just creates noise that is not helpful. So tap into your influencers. Who can drive change? How can they help adoption? This is not just a one-way street of the developer creator, the Tableau developer creator putting something out there and then everything is incumbent upon them. No, this is collaborative. So if you're working with somebody in the business, or if you are in the business, who is that SME, that subject matter expert that can help you? Even if it's another developer who has a really great, trusted reputation, can they help you drive adoption? It goes from, tapping into those folks so that you can do what's best for your company. The other part of this is monitoring and making changes. So check your dashboard views. Who are the top end viewers? Who are the bottom end viewers? Can you reach out to them and ask them what they like? What might be some things that would make their life easier? Why they use the dashboard or why they don't? Maybe they don't understand it. And that's a great data point. But if you don't know, you can't make changes, right? Like if I go back to my example of this resource workbook, had no idea. And so for him, he thought everything was fine. Whereas in fact, people weren't using it, weren't aware of it. And it was dying a slow death on Tableau or on the server. Look at your admin insights. This is on Tableau Cloud, but see if you can get that information and the similar kind of, or it's admin insights on Tableau Cloud or whatever that dashboard looks like on server. That's a great resource to learn more about your dashboard, the number of views, the number of people using it, how recently was it accessed. If your dashboard hasn't been accessed for 9 months and it's supposed to be accessed at least monthly, well, that's a data point you can follow up on. What's happening here? Check in with your users. No news is not always good news. Make feedback easy. Email buttons, Google Forms, GChat, Slack, Teams, whatever you have for collaboration, make that a part of your dashboard and make it as easy as possible because you want to be able to know what people are doing, what they're using, what feedback they have so that you can iterate and make it better. Whoop. All right, so if we go beyond one dashboard, so that was very much focused on the UAM squared, the understanding the awareness, the marketing, and making changes for one dashboard. But if you have more than one, what should you do? So enablement at scale. Put together or access viewer training. Help them feel comfortable and confident to get the information they need. Again, this is part of knowing your audience. Maybe they need it or maybe they don't. But if they're not using it because they're afraid they might break something or they're not sure because it looks really complex, help them. Give them training. I love some of the things I've seen are in dashboard tours, but also just video recordings where somebody has said, this is our dashboard, here's about the data, and here's how you can create a custom view. They save it to their internal site. We have something like an internal YouTube, which I think is fantastic. But save it to your internal site and send it to viewers. So that way they know how to navigate dashboards. Shout out awesome work. I am a huge fan of newsletters. We have a really great open rate on ours, but it's a really effective way of consolidating communications so that we don't pile on in the inbox. But it's a really nice way of putting communication out there and shouting out those dashboards that are great or that provide so much value. Talk about it in team meetings or town halls. That's how you can also increase adoption, making people aware because we're all so busy and sometimes we don't know that there might be something out there that can really help us. And by talking about it, we can learn about it and then start using it. And then provide your developers with Cricut killer ideas. Provide them with the UAM squared, making sure that they understand their audience, that people are aware of it, that they're marketing it and monitoring the changes and then making changes, right? Like data is great, but if we don't use it, then we're not fully leveraging information that could be really valuable and help us make a dashboard even more valuable to our audience. So what happens when you forget to kill a cricket and it's just out there quietly chirping away? So if you have crickets, and this is also known as everything else you talked about was cool and all, but my work environment isn't like that, or I don't have that exact setup. Send an email with your audience. Send an email and book some time on the calendar for feedback and for business impact. This 2-for-1 of getting feedback about your dashboard or how the dashboard has impacted the business allows you to keep them involved and engaged and creates ownership. So if they have ownership, they're more likely to do what they need to do to help this dashboard be a success. Set up a time for the feedback session to check in and help nurture your audience. If you set it and forget it, they are going to be forgotten, and so is your dashboard. There are 3 types of feedback sessions that you can do. One is an interview. Second is observation. This is probably the best, where you just put the dashboard up there and say, okay, show me what, forget that I'm here and go in and use this dashboard. Where do they click first? Where do they go back to? Are they clicking the things that you thought they'd click? Are they hovering over? This observation, and you can record it with their permission, will help you understand, okay, what do I need to do to build a better dashboard for them? And then asynchronously, where they provide feedback and you respond to questions. So they may say, like via email, say, well, the first thing I do is I click the chart on the right-hand corner. And then you can provide questions back to that. Go through a mini business value process. Get them to provide a picture of the before and after. Did the dashboard increase revenue? Did it cut expenses? Did it make their work life more efficient? You can quantify those. So that way you know that the dashboard has value. What would make your life easier or better with this dashboard? Ask them about that. And you can get that through the interview feedback. But this mini business value process it does 2 things. One, it allows you to understand the value that your dashboard's providing. So then you know that you're working on valuable information, or if it doesn't provide value and the business still thinks they need something like that or this type of dashboard, then what can you do to help improve the dashboard value? So that's one way. But then the second way is you're nurturing your audience this way. You're talking with them. You're building that relationship. So there are a few takeaways here, and I've left time for some questions. Create user-centered dashboards. Keith Dykstra and Kendra Allensbach of Interworks have a fantastic talk on this. It's amazing and you should listen to them. But creating user-centered dashboards are going to help you have dashboards be successful. And success in the way that I'm defining it is that they are adopted and they are used and people are checking in with them, and you can see that through the data. Create ownership. They invested in this work too. They may not have paid money, or maybe they did, but they may not have paid money for it, but they've paid time. There's, time and money are resources. So they've invested in this. They should maximize the investment. Implement this methodology, the UAM squared, understand, aware, market, and monitor, for your dashboards. So that way you can ensure that your dashboards are of value and are meeting their needs. And then finally, celebrate your successes. There's this study that shows that when we celebrate success, we feel good. And our bodies are set up like they love to do things that make them feel good. So you'll keep doing the things that make you feel good. So it's this cycle of when you celebrate your success, you'll continue to do that same kind of thing because more success makes you feel better, and you'll keep doing the things. So implementing this, creating successful dashboards, celebrate that, because it's a lot of work sometimes, and it's a lot of thoughtful work that goes into it, and you should be celebrated for that. All right, so I have just a couple of my social media links here. Questions, you can ask them now or you can ask them later, but I am in love with adoption and enablement activities. They're really helpful, because if you just put something out there and you don't nurture, you don't enable folks, it may fall flat, or it may not be used as intended. And that's information you should know. So that's it for my talk. Yeah, I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Emily, for the great session. I really love your analogy of dashboard influencer. Never thought about it, but this is something we can go ahead and talk to our customers also about it. So thanks a lot for sharing all the best practices, how we can go ahead and increase adoption of the dashboards.
Yeah, no
So,
problem.
so if you have any questions for Emily, you can put it into the Q&A or comment section, or raise your hand. Happy to unmute you, and you can ask her the question directly. Anything you're comfortable with. I think in the meantime, Emily, I can ask one question when
Sure.
everyone is thinking about it. What do you think are the three factors why people don't go ahead and use dashboards? Is it because the individual who is creating it, they are not thinking about who are the people they are creating it? Like, what are some of the common things that you observe when you go ahead and talk about
Yeah.
adoption and implement to the users?
Sure. I think the user-centered dashboard is probably the biggest challenge. So what I've noticed is that people will develop dashboards. It's almost like assembling a dashboard. Okay, I know that I want to do a comparison, so I'll put a bar chart, or I need to show correlation, so I'm going to show a scatter plot. Um, I'm going to build it the way that I think it should be done because I have data visualization expertise, and I can use my expertise to turn this dashboard and get it out quickly. So I think part of it is just not taking the time perhaps, and that may be because you feel pressured for time, but not creating a user-centered dashboard. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And as part of that, it's that critical thinking or asking about what are they going to do with it. I had an example one time where somebody wanted to measure compliance. I was like, okay, we need to be within 30 days of this rule. So they did a bar chart for 30 days. And I'm like, like now somebody has to go through, even at a bar chart, which is very easy to read, and go through, okay, did this one make it? Did this one make it? Oh, we're over here. Okay, that's extra time. That's extra cognitive load. That's unnecessary for your audience. So instead of them going, okay, this one's under, this one's over, this one's under, okay, 45 days, yeah, that's over. And there was no reference line, it was just bars. So if you're measuring compliance, for example, it's something like a constant reference line. Would that be helpful for them to quickly see which ones are over? Maybe instead of doing the whole dashboard, it's just the ones that are over, um, the constant line. So the ones that are exceptions to policy. So that's where I think there's additional work that can be done on really focusing in on what the user needs to help them make that decision quickly. So that could be why they're not adopting the dashboard, or it's not getting as many views as you'd like. The other thing is, it's not intuitive. So I don't, especially if you have really deep skills and you love to do the creative charts. Does your audience actually have the graph literacy level to understand that? So do you need to do some training to help them? I remember in this resource workbook, I created a circle plot and I thought it was great. I thought it was something different than a bar chart. It would help from what I call bar chart burnout. And I trained them on how to read it. And then I had to keep training them and training them. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, wait, I'm spending too much time trying to train them on how to read this. I think I probably need to change the chart. So if you aren't doing that continual training, um, people may just not adopt it because it's too hard. So that's where that feedback is super important, reaching out, nurturing, building that relationship so that way you can make some improvements. Because, like that guy I talked about, he didn't even know that people weren't using it. He thought people were. And that's unfortunate because think about, I mean, that one project was massive amounts of work. I mean, we worked on that for months and months and months because of all of the work that went into it and all of the sources that we were marrying together and the things that we needed to do. Now, that was like version 6 or 7, so we didn't have some of the features we had today. But like if somebody else were going to do that, that's rework that we don't even have to do. So check in with your users and see, what they're doing in terms of usage and what could make it even better. Like as an audience member, as a consumer of that, I would feel really valued that you wanted my opinion. And that I felt like, okay, I have some ownership of this and I'm going to help make it a success. So I think those are some key things for helping to have good adoption of a dashboard. So create user-centered dashboards, do feedback.
Thank you, Emily, for that.
Yeah.
And one thing, personally, what I have felt, I think we are not doing much when we go ahead and create programs for viewers. I think all our training programs are for creators or explorer, if I talk about in Tableau terms over here. But I think for viewers, we currently we don't have anything, right? So what are some of your ideas, right, for the viewers, how we can go
Yeah.
ahead and help them? And is it difficult to go ahead and tell an executive that you should go ahead and use a dashboard like that? I think these are some of the challenges which I heard from my customers also.
Yeah. So I know at work we develop some training and we focus on creators, but we also have in our roadmap to have a viewer learning path because it is important to understand. Because here's what happens without viewer training. I'm a viewer and I look at a dashboard and I go, oh, well, I need it just a little bit different, or I need a different view of this. So then I'm going to go out and reach out to somebody and say, hey, this dashboard is pretty much there, but I need a different view. Can you create that for me? So now we're creating more work that maybe a custom view could have solved. So if I provide training to viewers, then they know, hey, I can do custom views. I can get metrics emailed to me. And that may be super helpful depending on your audience. It sounds like such a big thing, but it's so important. I mean, I sound like a broken record. Know your audience, depends on the audience, but it really is all about them. So putting together short training for them. So what's something under 5 minutes that they can consume on how to use this dashboard, how to create a custom view, how to create a subscription, metrics, all of those things that are going to be valuable for them and save them time. So Sagar, can you ask your question about executives again? Because I lost track of it in my mind.
Sure, sure. So my question was that I think when you go ahead and reach out to the executives, right, when they are not using the dashboard, how should we go ahead and start a conversation? Because
Yeah.
going ahead and reaching out to someone down executive is easy, right? But going to the executive and asking them for the reasons why you're not using the dashboard, I think this is something we all, I think, struggling right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Fair question. Really good question. Um, so I may not start with the executive. I would start with their chief of staff or their analyst. So for me, when I was in the public sector, I was an analyst, not like a data analyst, but I was an analyst that worked with a senior leader of the organization, and they reported to, they were just a couple of steps above, below the head of the agency. So their time was valuable. They didn't really have time to talk to a lot of folks. So that would be delegated to me. So I was that person's voice. So what would happen is that the developer would come to us, provide us this dashboard that they wanted to share with us. And like this actually happened. I remember this guy came to us and said, here's the dashboard I'm putting together for the managers. What do you think? And it was very operational. It wasn't at an executive level. I knew that my manager and her peers needed something very quickly. You know, that old, like, can you see it in 5 seconds type of rule that really applied to my manager. So what I knew was I could give him feedback to say, listen, you're going to need to restructure this. If you want to have that detail, like put it maybe below the fold, put it on the bottom part of the dashboard, maybe link to a different dashboard, but they are going to be in a meeting and they need that number that they can talk to with the head of the agency. So he didn't necessarily go to my manager, who was an executive or senior manager. He went to me and my peers to have that conversation. And then when he was ready, after he incorporated that feedback, then he could share it with the executives to say, here's what this is going to do. Here's what it measures. And again, talking about the benefits. So in the meantime, if you can't get that meeting with the managers, what I was able to do then was to say, hey, boss, wanted to give you an update on some meetings that I've had this week. I met with this guy about this dashboard, gave him some good feedback. It was, we encouraged him to make it more at an executive level, and that should be rolling out soon, right? So I'm the influencer in that case. I'm telling her, hey, there's this dashboard. Hey, it's at an executive, it's going to be at an executive level. Here's the time frame that we can expect it. And I would say something like, I think it's really going to be helpful for us. Or when we went from Excel spreadsheets that I was marking up on a plane ride to different bank sites, when we went to convert that to a dashboard, it was after going through some of the preliminary feedback, telling my boss, this is going to make our lives so much easier. This is going to help us have data-informed conversations about why strategies are set for X or why they're not, and why the work days seem higher than what the risk is showing. So I was telling her, look, I was running towards pleasure. Our lives are going to be easier. And this is somebody who maybe they weren't comfortable with Tableau or technology. She was, but when you have something that is new, there's sometimes a little bit of hesitance. So I'm talking about how great this is going to be. Hey, we don't have to be on the plane highlighting numbers and doing up and down arrows to see if it's something changed, which is what I used to do. This is making our lives so much easier. I am so excited for it. Well, now she's like excited for it because her life is going to be easier. So I really believe that talking with those, I call them dashboard influencers, but talking with those folks who have the ear of the executive is so key.
Thank you, Emily. I think I really like your word dashboard influencer. I think that's the key when you're having conversations with the executive. There is one question, I think it's specific to Tableau. And
Okay.
Rajinder is asking any tips related to dashboards published in multiple tabs? For example, in current scenarios, I have seen most of our dashboard users only visit the first tab of the dashboard only, and they don't go to the other tabs which they have created.
Yeah, I would use navigation buttons. Yes, you can see the tabs up at the top, but that might not be a strong enough call to action. So explicitly invite them to that tab. Click for detailed metrics or whatever the call, whatever makes sense, but have a strong call to action there. For more detail, click. So I would use navigation buttons to help invite them to take the next step that you want them to take. And then if you do dashboard tours or, if you're doing some of these things, show them. so that way that you've planned, show them in your tours or your demos. So that way you've planted the seed that they should click that button. That's how I would, that's how I would do that.
Thank you,
Or that's
Emily.
one way you can do it, I should say.
Yeah, I think we are already over time. I think any last thoughts from you, Emily, before we go ahead and close this session?
The only thing I would say, like, keep working, for those who are doing user-centered dashboards, you all are awesome. If you have some opportunity to work on that, please do. It's so important. And if you have any questions outside of this, please feel free to message me. I love connecting about this stuff and talking about it because we can all learn from each other on what works. So yeah, I think that's my closing thought. Use the UAM squared methodology. Understand, have awareness, market, and monitor.
Thank you, Emily. With that, thanks a lot, Emily, for coming and presenting on VizConnect. It was an honor. Thank you for sharing all your methodologies. I think I'm really taking away that dashboard